evening, everyone. My name is Nicky Milner. I'm a Professor of Archaeology here at the University of York. And on behalf of the University of York, on this rather wet and chilly evening, I'd like to warmly welcome you all and thank you very much for coming out. Thank you for turning up. It's wonderful to see so many of you here and to have had a chat with quite a few of you before we started. And the reason we're here is because of our esteemed guest, the brilliant Greg Jenner. Before we get going, I'm going to tell you a little bit about Greg. So Greg studied here at the University of York doing archaeology and history. And after that, he landed probably one of the most coolest jobs you can imagine, working in the BBC show Horrible Histories. And we all love Horrible Histories, right? Yes! Greg's not only been part of the Horrible Histories team, but he also hosts the phenomenally successful BBC podcast, You're Dead to Me, where he brings together famous comedians and expert academics to talk about all sorts of different people and periods of the past in a fun and amusing way, but also historically accurate. And he's also a best-selling author, his latest work being Chaotic Stone Age, which I know some of you have bought this evening. It's a fabulous read, great for learning about the Stone Age, which you should want to do because the Stone Age is the most exciting period in the past. That's in my opinion. I am a bit biased because I do study the Stone Age, but this book is available for purchase and signing by Greg tonight. So, without further ado, please join me in giving a massive, enthusiastic welcome to the man who makes history and archaeology fun and exciting and cool, Greg Jenner.
Oh dear, no pressure. Well, thank you so much, Nicky. It's so lovely to be here. I love York. It's where I became, I was going to say became a man, became slightly less of a child. I spent 4 years here. I did my master's here as well, and I love coming back. It's a huge privilege to be part of the sort of part of the building's history and to see familiar faces and to see new faces and young faces here as well. Thank you all for coming. We're going to do a kind of double act tonight, and it's fun. We haven't really done this before. We met at lunch in the summer and we thought, oh, let's do a thing. We're going to talk about the Stone Age, but we're going to talk about the British Stone Age mostly. And we're going to talk mostly about your expertise, which is Star Carr, which is archaeology on your doorstep. But before that, I thought I'd give you a quick introduction to the global Stone Age, because it's pretty big. And we'll be getting to the Mesolithic, which starts when?
It's right at the end of the Ice Age. It's about 9,500 BC.
Yeah, so 11,500 years ago, give or take.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to race you through 3.5 million years in 10 minutes, and then we'll do that. So the Stone Age is a tricky one. I'm a historian by training, so by definition, I'm way out of my comfort zone. Stone Age is, as I said, 3.5 million years, but it's more than that. It's a really huge story of evolutionary transition and change, and multiple species of hominins, which is the fancy science word for an upright ape like us. And writing this book with Dr. Brenna Hassett, who's a fantastic archaeologist as well, she's a scientist too, this book was a nightmare to write because the science moves so fast. I mean, you can attest to that, can't you?
Yeah, I mean, when I was reading the book and I was thinking, gosh, when I did archaeology at university, which was about just under 30 years ago, which sounds like a long time, I'm sure, to many of you, but nothing like 3 million years ago. When I did that, it was completely different to what's in the book. We didn't have the same kind of hominins that Greg's going to tell you about. So things change really rapidly in archaeology. We learn and make new discoveries all the time.
Yeah, we had to rewrite this book 5 times. It took 8 months to write. By the time it was published, it was wrong. Now, please buy the book, but actually, within the book we say, by the time you read this book, it will be wrong. That is the virtue of archaeology. That's the extraordinary thing about Palaeolithic archaeology at the moment. The science moves so fast, and amazingly, the thing that's so far away is the thing that changes the most. In Tudor studies, in Victorian studies, nothing that we discover changes our opinion of the Victorians. we sort of tweak it slightly. We go, oh, now we know this thing, this small little thing. In the Stone Age, you just rewrite the book. You literally go, all right, brand new species, sorry. Just that family tree that we had, that's wrong now. So just very quickly, I wanted to show you a tiny little thing. This is the timeline of the Stone Age. We tend to break the Stone Age down into 5 eras. Apologies, it's quite hard to see the small writing, but we tend to go 5 eras. Those are called the lower Palaeolithic. You've got the middle Palaeolithic, and you've got the upper Palaeolithic. And then you get Professor Nicky's expertise, the Mesolithic, which means the middle
Stone Age.
But we've already had Middle Stone Age.
Yes.
See, this is the problem with archaeology, right?
Yes, yeah.
So it's the second Middle Stone Age, and then you get the Neolithic, the new Stone Age. So when we divide that up into 5 chunks, you might assume they're all equal chunks. Well, the first chunk is 2.5 million years. The second chunk is about 450,000 years. The third chunk's about 40,000 years. The fourth chunk, 5,000 years. The final chunk, 3, 5, 7, depends where you are in the world. So the problem with the Stone Age that archaeology has is these chunks get progressively smaller, but more detailed. And obviously, as you become a historian, you then realise that actually you get like a whole century is important, or a whole decade, or a whole year. You know, sometimes we'll talk about a whole, you know, do you remember 2022, 2023, when we had like 5 prime ministers or whatever it was? It was chaos. We're used to lots of stuff happening very quickly. In the Stone Age, lots of things stayed the same for a long time. So, just very quickly, I want to introduce you to your ancestor. You might not recognise him from the Christmas card, but this is who we are descended from. We are all the descendants of tree shrews. And the amazing thing is, this is not a painting or a drawing, this is a photograph. Tree shrews are known as living fossils. Now, I'm not a scientist, Professor Nicky is, but how can a species still exist when we are descended from it is an interesting question, right? Well, it's all to do with evolution. It's all to do with random chaos of evolution. 34 million years ago, these animals were under evolutionary pressure, which is to say that the world changed, the climate changed. They were living in Africa, the weather changed, and some of them moved to look for new food, and some of them stayed. The ones that stayed are still there, and they still look like this. They're still adorable and cute and make adorable. They look kind of like me, actually. They've got kind of sharp face. So the resemblance is quite clear. But the ones that moved, they moved to go and find new food sources. And eventually, gradually, the evolutionary pressure of heating and cooling forced them to change and evolve through random mutation. It wasn't deliberate. They didn't choose to do it. It wasn't a power-up in a video game. They just evolved by chaos. And the ones that evolved gradually turned into apes. And the apes came down out of the trees, and their teeth got bigger for grinding and chewing food, and they started to walk upright. And then they eventually turned into various other species that used tools. So 3.3 million years ago, we get the first use of tools. And these species are, they're very, very famous. You might have heard of one called Lucy, named after the Beatles song. And this is in Africa that she was found. And they are small, they're like 1.20 meters, they're kind of dinky, they're covered in fur, but they're not chimps, but they're not humans. They're in between. And we now know there are something like 25 species of hominins before us, before Homo sapiens. All of you in this room are Homo sapiens, although almost all of us in this room will have a little bit of Neanderthal DNA as well. So we'll all have about 2 to 3% Neanderthal DNA, so we're all a little bit Neanderthal. But 2.5, 3 million years ago, that's when we start the Stone Age, and it's when we see the first use of tools.
How's that? Better? Oh, you've all been so polite. You've been sitting there, not able to hear me. Shall I start again? No, I won't. I haven't got time. Okay, so the Stone Age starts with tools. That's why we call it the Stone Age. Before that, it's before the Stone Age. So you have these various species, like Sahelanthropus chilensis, that's not Stone Age. It's pre-Stone Age. This is Stone Age when you get tools. And you've got Audubon tools initially, later the Acheulean tools, which is a 2-faced hand axe, super sharp, super strong. And eventually you end up Musterian tools, which is Neanderthals. And they're using those. So that is how we define the Stone Age. And this is the first species to leave Africa. They're called Homo erectus, so-called because they stand upright. Actually, everyone stood upright before them. And they were about 1.45 meters tall, so they were as tall as some of you in the room. And they were a little bit dinkier than us, and they ate nuts and fruit and plants and wild animals, but they didn't hunt. We'll get to that, won't we, I think? We'll get to hunting. But they were the first species to leave Africa 1.8 million years ago, and they're the most successful species of all time because they survived until 100,000 years ago. So in terms of hominid species, they did 1.7 million years of survival, while others came and died out. So they're kind of amazing. They're the ones who discovered fire, hence the fun little gif in the corner. That was 800,000 years ago. The discovery of fire led to the discovery of cooking, and cooking led to getting new calories, because when you cook your food, you produce more, you're digesting more calories, right?
Yeah.
Which means you can get smarter, which means your brains grow bigger, and the bigger your brains, the more other things you can start to invent. We don't know if they had language, we don't know if they had art, probably not at this stage, but it's a good question, debatable. And after them, you get Neanderthals. Now, the first people to walk in Britain, we have footsteps from 900,000 years ago, I believe. So we've got little footprints. We think they're probably erectus. They're probably before Neanderthals. Neanderthals come after. But we know that Neanderthals lived in this country. They lived in Europe, and so they came here. And they were stronger, broader. They had bigger brains than us, but we don't know if they were smarter than us. Because what are they using their brain for? They might have used that brain for eyesight. It might have been an evolutionary adaptation that gave them better eyes. We don't know. But in the debate of the book, Dr. Brenner and I have a debate about whether they had language. Could they speak? Could they use words with each other? And Brenner makes the case for yes, and I make the case for no, for the sake of an argument, because it's fun. But actually, the case for yes, quite interesting. Have you got a position?
No, I don't. I think it's always really difficult to know those sorts of things.
Mm-hmm.
I remember actually we had some TV people come to interview us at Star Carr when we were working there, and the presenter live on television asked what language they would have spoken then, and I was tempted to say Yorkshire. I didn't say Yorkshire. But no, you didn't. It was one of those annoying things, the frustrating things. We can only guess. We can only kind of have these discussions about it.
Yeah. So erectus was still around until 100,000 years ago. Neanderthal was still around until about 30,000 years ago, give or take. But they had bigger brains than us, supposedly, but they had broader jaws, big foreheads, so they're slightly different looking. And then 190,000 years ago, we shared the planet, so we evolved by this point. We are 300,000 years old, our species. But we shared the planet with at least 4 other species of hominin, possibly more. So we were not the only hominins on the planet. For a long, long period, there were really dinky ones called Homo floresiensis, nicknamed the Hobbit people. They lived on a very specific island in Southeast Asia, and they were 1 metre 20 tall. They were really, really dinky, about the same height as my 6-year-old daughter. And they hunted dinky elephants, because on this island, everything was either massive or tiny. It's a thing called island dwarfism, where when you have restricted food and restricted resources, animals either evolve to be huge, like mega rats, or they evolve to be small, like mini elephants, stegodons they're called. So floresiensis, erectus was still going. Homo denisova we only discovered like 10 years ago, and that was discovered through genetics, through DNA, and they did it through a finger bone, which is amazing. An entire brand new species discovered by a tiny bone in your finger. There are 3 bones in your finger. 1 bone was all it took to go, that's not a human. That's incredible. I mean, that's amazing, right?
And DNA is revolutionising the way we do archaeology. We can learn so much about people in the past through DNA studies. So no doubt we'll make many more discoveries in the years to come.
Yeah. So just very quickly, we have 5 species coexisting. And when I say coexisting, interbreeding. Humans and Neanderthals had children together. So we are all the byproduct of interbreeding. Neanderthals only lived in Europe and Asia. Erectus were in Africa, and then they went around the whole world. And that is an incredibly important story, is that it's not about just one species surviving. These people might have known each other, and maybe they spoke language together. We don't know.
No, we don't know, but maybe they did.
Maybe they did. We need a time machine. So very quickly, we'll rattle through. This is a major kind of breakthrough. We used to think that cave art was only invented in Europe because Europeans are the best. We now know that's not true. The oldest cave art in the world has been found in Indonesia. Have any of you seen the TV show Bluey, the kids show with the cartoon dogs? Yeah? It's an amazing show, right? It's incredible. So you might know that Bandit, the dog, he's an archaeologist. And he discovers ancient bones, because he's a dog, he digs up bones. It's a great joke. So the creator of the show, Joe Brum, his brother in real life, discovered this cave art. His brothers were world-renowned archaeologists working in Indonesia, and that is why Bandit is an archaeologist. So that's kind of cool, right? So this cave art is 50,000 years old. It might be older. And this beautiful Picasso, terrible joke, that is the earliest representation of a thing ever found in art. But we have older art, we think, in terms of like little patterns done by Neanderthals, little stripes, little shapes. And you've got at the bottom left corner the Lion Man of Hohenstein-Stadel, that Dr. Brenner thinks is not a lion at all. She thinks it's a bear. We had a big argument. And you have Lascaux cave art as well. So Lascaux, Chauvet, and Altamira are the three great sites in Europe where cave art was first discovered in the 19th century, and it changed how we understood the deep past. And they're amazingly beautiful, incredibly realistic drawings of animals. Most of them are animals that you hunt. Only one of those caves has animals that are predators. So most Stone Age art doesn't show scary lions, scary bears, scary saber-toothed cats. It mostly shows kind of aurochs, big cattle, and deer and bison and horses, the animals that humans might have hunted, which I think gets us maybe onto your section. But just very quickly, these are the animals that all died out 10,000 years ago in North America, in Australia, in Africa. There was a huge dying out of big animals called megafauna, which means big animals. And they all died out roughly the same time, and we're not sure why. But it's the end of the Ice Age. It's possibly a hunting thing. It could be over-extinction from animal. It could be human pressure. It could be us hunting.
And the climate's changing a lot at this time as well. So we do see, you know, the animals that are around in the environment do change as the climate changes. So in the part of the world that we're going to look at in a minute at Star Carr, we have very different kinds of animals existing only a few hundred years before Star Carr happened. So there are lots of horses in the landscape because it's quite cold. It's a tundra-like landscape where there's very little vegetation. And then the horses suddenly disappear, and at a site like Star Carr, which by that time there's a lot more wood, it's a wooded landscape, there's lots of different animals appearing, red deer, wild cattle, elk and so on. That changes, and so that might well be to do with climate change in some parts of the world.
The story of the Stone Age is the story of climate change. So humans now are heating our planet with our pollution, with our factories and so on. That is a scientific fact, but the world has always known heating and cooling, because of a thing called the Milankovitch cycle, which sounds like a kind of cool bicycle, but it's not. It's a famous scientist who discovered that actually the Earth's orbit isn't a perfect sphere. It's not a big old lovely round circle that you might have seen in your textbooks when you were kids, or some of you kids might know that. No, it's like a lemon shape. And the Earth gets pulled out into space by the gravity of Jupiter and Saturn, and then it slowly goes back. And it happens every 100,000 years. And what that produces is heating and cooling. So when we talk about the Ice Age, there were loads of Ice Ages. Loads of them. And the last one was 12,000 years ago?
Yeah. Well, the last one ends about 11,500 years ago.
So Britain before that is covered with an ice sheet?
Not exactly. It's
Okay.
complicated, but it is at times, and then it retreats. And at the bit that I'm talking about, there are probably big blocks of ice in places like the Lake District and some parts of Wales and Scotland, but actually it's not a huge ice sheet. So sometimes, but even if you've got big kind of glaciers in places like that, it's still going to be cold in the rest of the country.
Yeah.
But then, right at the end of this last Ice Age period, the climate changes really, really rapidly. I mean, some scientists think it might happen within about 10 to 50 years.
That's amazing.
And about maybe as much as 5 degrees change.
Yeah.
So things are happening really, really fast then.
And is that when the island of Britain is separated from the continent?
No, that's a bit later.
Okay.
So obviously as the temperatures start to warm, the ice sheets in places like the poles, the ice starts to melt, so sea levels begin to rise, but it takes a really, really long time for sea levels to rise to the height we've got now. And so actually Britain is joined to the rest of Europe for several thousand years through the Mesolithic,
Yeah.
and then eventually we become an island.
And that land's called Doggerland.
That's right, yes.
Yeah.
Well, that's what we call it, yeah.
Yeah, they didn't call it
Yeah,
that.
no, they didn't call it that.
They called it HS2. No, they didn't. So that's the sort of amazing thing is through much of the Stone Age we were connected to Europe, which means that under Trafalgar Square, archaeologists have found hippos. They found the bones of kind of safari animals that now you'd have to go to Africa to go and see. We were connected to the rest of the world, and it was much, much warmer, 100, 200,000 years ago. So there were these kind of incredible, amazing animals there. But obviously the Ice Age changed that, and then Britain became an island. And I think maybe that gets us on to... Oh yeah, we'll get to that. Hang on, is this the right slide? Maybe it's not the right slide.
Well, no, I think what we're doing here, Greg, is...
We haven't really done this.
We are... Okay, when we talked about this...
Yes.
I did pull you up on the fact that you didn't seem to be so
I'm in
excited.
trouble.
Yeah, so excited about British Mesolithic. We seem to be focusing on sites like this, which is a very exciting site in Italy.
I was purely going chronologically, in my defence, and Dr. Brennan too. Yeah, I mean, that's the real challenge, right? The real challenge is, your expert, wonderful science, the Mesolithic happens after, in terms of like the timeline, the Neolithic had already happened in Turkey.
Yeah. Yeah.
So in Turkey, in Western Asia, in the Near East, they had already invented the Neolithic era that comes after the Mesolithic, but that happened before the Mesolithic. Because Britain, don't tell Nigel Farage, we were behind the rest of the world.
Yeah, yeah. So in other parts of the world, they had started to develop agriculture, they'd started to grow cereals and crops, and so became farmers. And the Mesolithic is before farming. So we have different things going on in different parts of Europe and different parts of the world.
Yeah.
And this here is a really interesting site, and I think it's useful to talk about this before we get on to Star Carr, actually.
So this is Göbekli Tepe, it's in Turkey. This is probably the earliest evidence of some sort of temple or religious building. It doesn't seem to be functional in terms of like, you can't live in it. You can't keep cattle in there, they're not keeping their geese in there. Or if they are, chaos, can you imagine? This seems to be a kind of religious site.
It does seem to be. I mean, that's what archaeologists do like to call sites that we can't really explain in any other way. They call it ritual or something like that. But no, it is an incredible site. I mean, you can see all the stone that's been used for building it, and you can see it looks quite extraordinary.
Yeah, and so this sort of blew out of the water a theory that used to be kind of current. I guess when I was taught archaeology, and perhaps probably you too, that you needed farming first. Mm. The theory used to be you needed farming to feed all the people to go and build temples. And then it turned out the temple came before farming. And everyone went, oh, bum. Okay, throw out the history books. So this is extraordinary. This is 6,000 years before Stonehenge, give or take. Mm-hmm. So this is a religious building in the Neolithic era. But then you get farming and domestication of animals, the creation of new animals. We've done that once. Anyone in the room own a dog? Yeah? Any dog lovers here? Okay, so you own a wolf. You own a wolf that has been very, very carefully trained to be a different animal. But in the Stone Age, 30,000 years ago, humans started turning wolves into dogs. And then in the Neolithic, they started doing it with other animals. Chickens, goats, sheep, cows. These are all animals we invented. And then I suppose we need to talk about the Mesolithic where we hadn't quite got there yet. We need to talk about Star Carr.
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
Should
Let's
we...
get on to Star Carr.
Hooray! Star Carr. I'll stop talking.
No, don't stop, no. No, I am going to try and convince you, Greg, that the British Mesolithic is also a very exciting period to study. And but we have lots of sites, but we don't have so many sites which have organic preservation. So organic preservation is when you get heat, which helps things like bone and antler and wood survive in the archaeological record. Most Mesolithic sites, many Stone Age sites, we just have flint tools. And so this is a really, really important site, very close to here. So very close to York, about an hour away. Very near Scarborough, as you can see on the map, and as we said, Star Carr, at the time of Star Carr, Britain was actually joined to the rest of the continent. So we were digging there about 10 years ago for a period of about 10 years, a large group of specialists, but it was actually first discovered in the 1940s.
Was it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
And it was discovered by a local amateur archaeologist. It was somebody who was one of the founders of Scarborough Archaeological and Historical Society. And all the founders, they went off into the local area and looked for archaeological sites. And he found 9 or 10 sites in this area. And he worked out that this whole area had been a lake. That's why we have peat that you can see here, the very dark soil. And the 4th site he found was Star Carr.
And what was he looking for? When you go looking for a site, what are you looking for?
He was walking up and down the ditches. There's a lot of ditches in that area because it's well drained. And he was looking for bone and flint and antler. And he was, literally kind of walking up and down the mud, I guess, looking for things poking out of the mud. And he kept finding these sites.
Amazing. Okay, so tell us more about Star Carr. Why is it important? Give us the big razzmatazz.
It is really important because it has all sorts of evidence to show how hunter-gatherers, how people at this time actually lived, that we don't get on other sites. So I think through some of our slides and through some of the artefacts we've got here, we can tell that story and you can see where we're going with this. So the first one that I want to talk about is the oldest house in Britain, and this is it. Looks pretty impressive.
It's quite pokey.
It was quite funny. I can hear someone saying there's nothing there. It does kind of look like that. This is what archaeology is about. So we find holes in the ground, and then we have to understand what that means. And with this particular area, so we were digging, and we're finding lots of flint, digging away, and suddenly there was this area which had a lot of darker soil, and every kind of trowel mark we were putting in, all this flint was popping up. It was absolutely packed with flint, and then we started finding these sort of post holes around it. And so we know that in these holes there are big posts coming out, and it would have been a roof around that, and that people were living in there and doing all sorts of different activities in there. But yes, admittedly, it doesn't look like the most amazing thing ever.
The thing that's important is finding the holes.
Finding the holes,
That's what you want. So absence of a post, you're like, there would have been a post, because the post rotted away.
That's right, yes.
Okay, so and that's how you can tell the size, the shape of it. You can start to deduce what might have looked like.
Yes.
How many people can fit inside? Is this a kind of Kevin McLeod grand design for a family of 6?
Well, yes. We.
Oh, it's a bit smaller. Okay.
This is what it looks like when we. So what we do a lot of, particularly here in this department, is a lot of experimental archaeology. So we find the archaeology and then we try and do experiments to understand what things would have looked like or how people would have done things in the past. And so we built several of these houses. Some of you, I know, have seen us build a house in the museum gardens last summer. And that gives us an idea. People always ask how many people can fit in a house like this, so we did a little film.
Oh.
You could have fitted more in there. When I showed this to my mum, she thought we'd have people coming in from behind. We were sitting in there, having finished for the day, and we thought, actually, it's quite spacious in here. I think lying down, obviously, if you've got people sleeping in there, probably a bit less than that. But this is why we do these experiments, because actually, if you just look at the floor plan on the ground, it looks really small.
So this is, you say, Britain's oldest house. So is it a house that is year-round, lived-in, permanent home? Or is this a temporary, better than a tent, not quite a house? How permanent is permanent?
Well, again, you're asking really difficult questions. But
Good, sorry.
So we all have different opinions on this, I guess. And I think one thing that made me think that these are probably, why can't these be houses that people lived in for a long period of time is, I was involved in another excavation at a site called Howick, which is further up the coast in Northumberland. At the time we found a Mesolithic house there, and that used to be the oldest house in Britain until we found the oldest house at Star Carr. But there, again, Clive Waddington built a replica house there, and a couple of years later, I went and visited it, and it was kind of lying on the ground, in bits. And what had happened was there were cows in the field, and the cows had knocked it down and then eaten the roof because it was made of turf. And it makes you think, doesn't it, though? If people in the Mesolithic were building houses like this, and then they wandered off for half the year, and we have big animals in the environment. There we have elk, and we have big aurochs, which are these wild cows, and big red deer. How long would these survive? And we know from sites like Howick that it lasted for about 100 years. So that's generations of people living in the same house and rebuilding it. So my personal view is that people did actually build them as houses, and they lived in them, and there were probably people living there all year round. But some people may have gone off on a hunting expedition. Some people may have gone off and visited their families. There might be some people kind of moving or marrying into other groups and so on. There might have been a lot of movement around the landscape, but lots of people doing different things. Anyway, that's my view. And we know at Star Carr that people were actually there for 800 years, which is twice the length of the Roman period. So that's a really long time.
I mean, that's the city of Liverpool, right? Liverpool was founded in the early 1200s. So if you think how long a city of Liverpool has been there, if people are in the same area of Britain for that long, that feels like a community. But that challenges the idea that the Neolithic invents permanent settlement. Yeah. So the theory that I got told as a student when I was here at York is that the Neolithic revolution is whereby humans invent permanent settlements, permanent homes, they stay in forever, they invent farming, which means they can grow their food, and they invent animals, they create new animals, and they domesticate them, and they keep them there, so they have their milk, and their meat, and their fur for clothes, and that's the big revolution. You're saying the archaeology points towards people have already done this before the Neolithic.
Well, yes, and I think that.
Maverick.
Yes. But I think also we have to be careful with all these labels, these things that we're calling the Mesolithic and the Neolithic. The definitions of them have changed through time. So, and the Mesolithic doesn't really make sense as a period. And people at the time weren't saying, "Oh, I'm a Mesolithic person." It's a name that we've given to that period in the past, and it starts with the end of climate change, which is just around the kind of environmental change, and it ends with the Neolithic period. So it doesn't really mean anything. And so I think it's time to just change some of these opinions and have the Mesolithic as people living a bit more permanently than we thought they were before.
I mean, you've made a good case. I mean, the Stone Age as an idea is a Victorian invention. Right? It's invented in the 1860s, that someone goes, I think there was an age of stone. So it's quite a modern concept. So this is really interesting, and I think the nice thing about it is if we get the sense of a community, the next question is, all right, what are they eating? What are they wearing? What are they doing with their free time? Because if they're hunter-gatherers, we might imagine them constantly chasing deer across the landscape, and they end up in Newcastle, and I'm like, all right, I guess we live here now. But if they're not doing that, if they're going out hunting and returning, then what are they doing with their Tuesdays?
Yeah, well, I mean, we can have a look at some of the tools, some of the things that they made in order to, this is maybe what they did on their Tuesdays. I think we can think about the environment around them, and the kinds of materials that were available to them, and the kinds of things that they might have done with those materials. And we have, some of you have seen these in the show and tell outside earlier. We've got some things here. They are still hunting red deer and things, and they're making bows and arrows. We have, so this one here, this very long, thin, uninteresting looking stick. This is a replica of it. This is, believe it or not, the world's oldest complete bow. What was that laugh for?
There you go. It feels quite flimsy.
It is, yes, it does feel quite flimsy. It's really interesting because it is quite small, and we think that it was probably used for fishing. You can actually fish with bows and arrows. This replica we have actually used, so it would have been strung, and we have used it. We actually bought a fish from Sainsbury's and put it in the university lake, so it was dead.
That's cheating, hang on.
We don't want to kill a real one. And we fired an arrow at it with one of these. These are barbed points, and these are hafted to a stick to make a...
So hafting is a really important technology. There's a much older technology, right? Hafting is 200,000 years ago.
Mm.
So the oldest spear we have is 400,000 years old. It was found here in Britain, and it snapped off. So clearly they'd stabbed an animal, the animal had gone, no thanks, and had clearly fought back. But the spear is 400,000 years old. Hafting, which is where you attach a kind of napped stone to the end of a wooden pole, that's 200,000, but they're still using it 11,000 years ago.
Oh yeah, and they're making these really nice barbed points. I actually have. So this is a real one from Star Carr. This is not a replica. So this, what you're looking at here, is 11,000 years old, and it's made out of antler. So they're making these out of red deer antler. And when you look at it, it's beautifully carved. It just shows the skill and craftsmanship of this kind of thing.
Hold it.
Yeah.
That's amazing, isn't it? It's beautifully delicate, but this is a weapon.
This is a weapon, yeah. And that may well have been used to kill a big animal like a red deer or wild boar or those sorts of animals.
And how do you prove this is a weapon? Are you able to use sort of comparative studies with other? Does this design show up in other places?
We often use examples from more recent hunter-gatherers, but we also use experimental archaeology again, and as I say, making one of those and firing at a dead fish did actually work. So
from Tesco.
Other supermarkets are available.
Yeah, it's like a BBC podcast, it's fine. Only chocolate Tesco. No, sorry, I did chocolate. So this is them fishing, this is them hunting. So they're going out to the landscape, they're getting their food, they're coming back, they're cooking it.
They're making fire. So these pictures up here, we have some gold here, not real gold, it's iron pyrite, it's fool's gold. But we had, not in our excavations, but the excavations in the 1950s, they did actually find some fool's gold. And this is really important because this and flint together, you can get sparks and make fire. And actually, I used to go and collect this fool's gold from Speeton and Reeton down on the East Coast with my granny. And it's quite interesting to think that probably 11,000 years ago, people were doing exactly the same in order to collect this, in order to make fire.
So they weren't valuing it because it was shiny and beautiful. They weren't saying, "Oh, I'm the king of the Stone Age. I get to wear the shiny gold crown." They were going, "This is a great firelighter."
Yeah, but I don't know. Don't you think that they might have liked it because it was quite shiny as well? Yeah,
my daughter would love this.
Yeah,
but it's not real gold.
It's not real gold.
No,
no.
I won't steal it then. So what else have you got in your lovely box of wonders?
What have we got here? We've got the pendants.
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you about the pendants. So, I thought I had a little one in here. Well, I don't. This is the pendant that we found. It's quite hard to see how big it is, but I've got a replica here. It's quite small. It's like a guitar plectrum, really.
I'm literally going to say, because I play guitar,
right.
My instinct is just to take that and try and do some riffing. It's not going to work so well. It's a bit too hard. Brian May plays for 50p coin, so maybe I can try it.
Yeah, I think, maybe we should. But it's got these amazing markings on them, which we find really mysterious. This image here, where you can see the markings being kind of engraved on, we have a colleague, Andy Needham, who did a huge amount of work looking at this pendant under a microscope, because actually the markings are really, really hard to see. I can't even hardly see them with my glasses on, the really small ones. And he did it so that he could see the sequence in which they've been made. And I mean, you look at this and everyone's got a different idea about what these might mean. We've also got these amber ones that come from Denmark. There was some amber found again at Star Carr, but these ones in Denmark, they're really quite large, and they found quite a lot of them. But again, they've got these amazing carvings on. I don't know what you think.
My instant thing, to be honest, the first thing that comes to mind is it some sort of marking of time? Is it a calendar? Is it a little diary entry? Dear diary, went out hunting, didn't get anything, hungry. day 2? Is it some sort of way of memorising what's happened?
I know. Well, I think it's some kind of tally marks or some kind of recording like that. But some people have talked about maybe it's a map, maybe it's some kind of ancient language.
Oh, yeah.
And also when you're wearing one like this, quite often it flips over. But also if you're wearing a lot of clothing, it's not actually visible. Are these things made to be seen, or are they special? I think the Times did a piece on it being a love token. Everyone's got different ideas about what it could be.
It's fascinating. We do have possibly evidence in the Stone Age of a calendar. There's a bone that's been whittled with marks that seem to count 30 days. And it's from quite deep into the Stone Age. It's from sort of 40, 50,000 years ago. And there's debate about, is this timekeeping? But obviously, these people would have charted the moon, they would have noticed the seasons, they would have, if they're hunting animals, they need to know when those animals are going to breed, when they're going to be, hibernating, when not to be in a cave with a bear. So maybe there's something to that.
And there are some really intriguing pits in the Mesolithic as well, more holes in the ground.
Lovely holes.
Holes in the ground are really important, and these holes in the ground, again, reconstructing where the posts would have been suggests some kind of calendar. But also, did you know that there are some Mesolithic pits in the Stonehenge car park? So before Stonehenge was built, the Mesolithic people were there first.
See, that's interesting, because I guess there's a reason that Stonehenge was put there. Because it makes sense that you'd stick something in an existing community.
Yeah.
So that sort of joins the dots. Stonehenge we tend to think of as like 5,500 years ago, and it takes them a few hundred years for them to work out what they're doing with it, and they drag the stones from Wales and from nearby Marlborough, and we imagine them sort of all sitting there going, oh yeah, I've built a brand new thing. But actually maybe then going, let's continue working on this
thing that the Mesolithic people invented.
Yeah, okay. That's interesting. I love the fact it's a car park. It's always a car park, isn't it? Richard III, Stonehenge, it's always a car park.
So those are the pendants. These are quite famous for Star Carr. These are the headdresses, and these are really exciting because we don't have any other examples in this country. We found 33 at Star Carr, and there's only a handful of others known in Germany. So there are these links with the continent as well. There are people doing similar things. So you can see one of these in the ground up here. Can you also see in that picture? They're kind of hiding. You probably can't see very well. But there are 2 roe deer skulls, headdresses here and here. And so we have some replicas here.
Oh, lovely.
To have a look at, and this little roe deer one as well.
So
and thanks to James Dilley, we've got this great reconstruction again of what this might have looked like if someone was wearing it on their heads, because we only find we find the bone and the antler, but we don't find furs or feathers, and so we can begin to imagine perhaps what they were wearing.
It's very Eurovision. It's very, remember Lordi? I don't know, it's maybe before your time, but it feels very like Germanic, Icelandic heavy metal band who've found, they've gone in their mum's dressing up cupboard and they've gone, right, we're wear this for our hat. But what's this for? Why would they wear these? Do we get a sense of this being daily behaviour? Is this special? There's no way to tell perhaps, but...
There are, again, there are different theories. So one of the theories is that people were wearing these kind of headdresses as a way of stalking animals. So particularly if the pelt of the red deer or the roe deer is still on, maybe it's a way of kind of masking your smell and trying to creep up on
hunting camouflage.
So hunting camouflage, possibly. But the other one is more, again, a ritual explanation. And again, looking at hunter-gatherers in other parts of the world, many of these societies have shamans, who are people who communicate with the animal spirits to try and ensure a good hunt, for instance, and prosperity on the communities. And so it may be that they were used in that way as well. And I think what's really interesting about where these headdresses were found, it was an amazing part of the site. It was just like a massive mound of bone and flint and antler and wood, all sorts of things all piled up in one area. And when we worked with our radiocarbon dating expert, so the person who helps date the site, she said that that part of the site might have actually even accumulated in 1 year. And so that makes you begin to think that maybe there was like some event had happened, and people are kind of putting these special things, and the pendant as well, into this one area. So maybe someone had died, or maybe there was a big festival, or maybe it had got really cold all of a sudden, and there's offerings to the gods. Later on in prehistory, we do see in the Bronze Age people depositing special artefacts into water.
Yeah, rivers. Yes, I mean we get we get swords and shields thrown in by the Iron Age Britons as well, who you might call the Celts. Throw them into rivers because they seem to believe the rivers are holy. Whether there's evidence of that here, I mean, this feels, as you say, shamanic or religious. Maybe communing with the animals, or maybe it's clearly, it's kind of fascinatingly grim. The kind of huge pile of bones.
Yeah.
So it doesn't feel very reverential. It feels more like we've eaten our dinner and now we're going to wear them as a hat. It feels a bit like we won, you lost. But whether there's something spiritual here as well.
Yeah. No, I think there's. I think they were doing some really interesting things that we're only beginning to sort of see. I mean, so one other area of the site, we found all this red deer bone all together, and it got quite exciting because there was some legs and there was some head bits, and there were all sorts of bits of red deer, and it looked like they'd actually deposited a whole red deer in bits into the edge of the water. And then you go back to the lab, you finish the excavation, you go back to the lab, and we have people working in the labs looking at everything. And one day Becky, who is our zooarchaeologist, our bone expert, came to me and said, "Nicky, there's something really weird with this red deer." I was like, well, what? And she said, "It's got 2 left back legs."
Oh.
And obviously red deer can't have 2 left back legs. And what we think was happening was that they were putting different bits of different deer together, but sort of almost recreating a deer from different...
Dr. Frankenstein.
Yeah.
She'll build the perfect deer.
Yeah.
So they were reconstructing the animal.
Yeah, and in the edge of the lake. So they're doing all sorts of... It's not just rubbish. These people they were doing more than that. And I think, Greg, you should also have a go at trying one of these on, because one of the issues with doing archaeology of this period is really fragile. The archaeology, it can deteriorate. So what we do is we make 3D replicas, we make digital models, and then we can print them like this. So it means that we can handle them, which means that you can try them on or understand them a little bit more. Quite a lot of people think that these holes in them are used as eye holes. I don't know if any of you remember, but quite a few years back there was a stamp made with a headdress on it, and on the stamp the holes were right at the back as a kind of way of holding it on the head. But do you want to play with that a bit?
Yeah, instinctively I want to do that. Hello! I can see you.
They are quite close together.
They are. I'm having to squint with one eye, so I've got... Maybe my nose is too big, but I can see through it, so that's possible.
There's another, it could be on the top.
Top of the head, fetching.
But not particularly comfortable, is it?
No, I wouldn't wear it to Ascot.
No.
It would be quite uncomfortable. It's quite heavy.
It's a bit like a fascinator.
A little bit, isn't it? It's sort of wedding. And I guess...
But on the back of the head really doesn't work. It would fall off. And also...
yeah, it's not a pillow. You don't sleep on it.
No.
But maybe a child though. Maybe a smaller... my eyes are further apart because I'm in my 40s, but maybe a child would find that. Maybe someone can get a volunteer maybe to come and try it.
Do we have somebody who wants to try it?
Someone want to come and try it? Yeah. Who put their hand up first? I think maybe in a black t-shirt over there. Yeah, do you want to come? I saw your hand shoot up very quickly. Do you want to come try
and then if people want to try it on afterwards, we can come and
do a fashion show.
We'll see if it works. But yeah, we have discussed whether they work better for children, whether it's some kind of initiation ceremony for children.
Do you want to come over here? Hello. Right, do you want to try this? Do you want to hold it up? It's quite heavy. Okay. Oh, I close that door. Can you see? Oh, I can see your eyes quite well.
Yeah.
Yeah? How's your vision? Can you see everyone in the audience?
Yes.
I think we proved the case. Hard science. Brilliant. Amazing. Thank you so much. That's very helpful.
Big round of applause.
So I think we need to age this down. This is a child's one, maybe.
And that's why actually making replicas and doing experimental archaeology is really important. It helps us understand a bit more.
The obvious thing I want to ask, actually, I mean, we haven't got tons of time, but just quickly, we've got tons and tons of animal bones. Do we have any human bones? You said funeral. We have funerals from this period in the Neolithic over in the Middle East. So famously there's a site in Israel where they found someone buried, who's probably a shaman, and she's buried with loads of animals, and also weirdly a foot. A human foot is chucked in the grave with her, and you're like, what's that about? But there's a clear, like, these people had gathered to celebrate this person's life, and they had piled in lots of animals with her, and we can see it's a funeral. Do we have anything at Star Carr?
No.
Okay. Glad I asked.
No, it's really weird actually, because there is a lot of bone there, and we also have a really cool scientific method called zooms, where we can do where we can't, if we can't see because it's not enough, it's not a big enough piece of bone, we can have a look at a really minute piece and use a thing called protein fingerprinting to identify what kind of species it is. We still don't find any humans there. So what are they doing with the humans? Are they burying them somewhere else? We only excavate a small proportion of the site, so we may just have missed a cemetery, possibly.
So yeah, there could be a cemetery. They could be cremating. They could be chucking them in the river. They could be eating them.
They could.
We had cannibalism in the Stone Age. We do. At Cheddar Gorge, a little bit earlier on, 15,000 years BC. We've got skulls and bones. People have chomped them. They've had a good old chomp. They've eaten. Maybe it's their cousin Jeff, or maybe it's a random person they killed, or maybe it's a religious thing where they are taking the person's flesh into their body as a way of remembering them, or maybe they're hungry. But we've got cannibalism, right, in the Stone Age.
Yeah.
So
it could be. I guess we'd still have some bones, but yeah, you're right. There's all sorts of different ways.
Sure.
So sadly we don't have any, because they tell us so much more about people at that time as well.
Is there anything else we need to know about Star Carr?
I can't remember if we've got another slide. No,
we're done with Star Carr. All right, fair.
Yeah.
All right. Well, so very quickly, we'll just take you through the right at the end of what happens after Star Carr. So the Mesolithic is here in Britain in, you said, sort of 9,500 BCE, something like that. We don't get the Neolithic here until about 4,000 BCE.
Yeah.
It takes a good 5,000 years for the Neolithic in Turkey to come across. And we actually get two whole population replacements that come. So we get the immigration of peoples twice that replace the population of Britain at this point. So people in Britain at this point would have had darker skin, we believe. They would have had, they would have looked more North African, perhaps. They might have had a reddish hair, but curly, dark hair, perhaps. We then get another population come in. 99% of the population is replaced by this immigrant population that come in before Stonehenge, and then we get the Beaker people who come in after Stonehenge, and they replace the population all over again. So actually the peoples of Britain have changed a huge amount in the Stone Age, and those of us who might have a descendants, going back that far, we are the descendants of immigrants. So, the story of people living in these isles, actually it's always been about change, about people coming and going, animals and humans too, which is really interesting. And so we get to, these are some of the animals we invented, I talked about in the Neolithic. But we get to Çatalhöyük, it's the first town, the first huge village, that's in Turkey. You can see how big it is. You talked about your permanent house in Britain. You got 12 people in, did you? I lost count. 12 people, okay. So these houses, Çatalhöyük in Turkey, is an amazing archaeological site. Dr. Brenner has dug there, so my co-author on the book. There are tons and tons of houses just piled up on top of each other, and they don't have streets, they walk across the roofs. So to go anywhere, you climb a ladder, you walk across your neighbour's house, and you climb a ladder down to the other side. So they've invented a village, but they haven't invented roads yet. They don't have front doors, they don't have windows, so it's quite smoky inside. We're not sure how many people would have lived in these houses, but we do know that there are dead people buried under the floorboards. They seem to have worshipped or wanted to keep their family close, but also genetic evidence has shown that it's not always the family. Sometimes random people buried under your floorboards, which is obviously a true crime podcast. That's a great investigation. But it's really interesting. They've sometimes found something like 40 or 50 people buried under the floor of these houses. And they piled their poo up outside the houses. So they didn't have the first great problem with civilization was where do you put the poo? In Shuttlefoot, they just went there. We'll just put it there. They haven't got toilets yet. They just pile it up. It's called a midden. And so that's what's happened. That's the Neolithic in Turkey. It takes 5,000 years to get to us, and we get, in the meantime, we get these megalithic sites. We get long barrows, we get menhirs, we get dolmens, these kind of big lumps in the kind of out in the countryside that you might see. They're kind of big grassy lumps, sometimes they're kind of covered in stone, like chambered cairns. The one at Maze Howe and Longrange, they are beautifully built so that they can, on the solstice in December, the sun I think it is, the sun shines directly through the doorway. So people are starting to pay attention to the sun and the sky and the moon. And then you eventually get Skara Brae, which is our great Neolithic. So it's very Flintstones. Everything's made of stone. The bed is made of stone. The cupboards are made of stone. The doors are made of stone. Everything is made of stone. Because there's no trees on the island. It's up in the Orkneys, off the coast of Scotland. That is where we get kind of the first real evidence of a community. But actually, maybe Star Carr is the first community. Maybe we have to sort of...
Yeah, and I think everything's always developing and changing, and at Star Carr we don't have beds like they do at Scarborough, we don't have stone beds. That was obviously an innovation. But yeah, I think the start of all these things for Britain, we've got evidence at Star Carr.
Yeah, absolutely. And Stonehenge is the famous one, and we might all know about Stonehenge and think, oh, it's very special. It's part of a wider landscape. It's part of there are other henges. Stonehenge technically is not a henge, which is very confusing, but there are other henges there. There's a wood henge, wood henge, straw henge, Stonehenge. There's a wood henge, there's blue henge. They sort of built stuff and connected it up. There's a cursus, there's a sort of long avenue that connects the river, and maybe they were already building on a Mesolithic community.
Yes.
So it's all joined up. So you've convinced me.
Good.
I've come around. That Star Carr is important and interesting in its own right. But I want to see a heavy metal concert with these dear animals, please. I want to see Slipknot performing in these, because that's a proper mask, isn't it? I don't know how much time we've got left, but I think if we can try and do questions, are you game?
Yes.
Cool.
Questions?
Is there a roving mic? I might be using the roving mic,
Yeah,
so maybe I should rove.
Well, we've got some people to help with it.
Oh, fabulous.
Yeah.
Okay.
Are there any questions?
Yeah, does anyone want to ask about the Stone Age?
Well,
And we can share the mic.
Okay.
That's fine, isn't it?
With the bodies under the floor, can it just be that different families have moved into the house?
I mean, it could well be. I mean, would you want to know if there were bodies under your floor? maybe the estate agent just didn't mention it. And people were just like, oh yeah, no, it's a lovely area, very clean. You know, we don't know. You know, in South America, there's really strong evidence in the ancient Andean communities of what, you know, not quite the Inca, but they worshipped their ancestors and they kept their ancestors as mummies, and they would bring them out at festivals, and for them it's ancestor worship. Is that happening in Shuttlefoot in the Stone Age? Is it ancestor worship? And that's an interesting question about Star Carr. Is there a sense of people understanding the past, right?
Well, yeah. Again, very difficult to answer, but I think, you know, these places where you do get buried, it is quite common actually. There are lots of different places where you do get burials within houses, and there must be a reason for that, and we can think about some of those different reasons.
Any other questions?
Me.
Down in the front row.
Why was Stonehenge built?
Oh, I wish I knew. Professor Nicky, help.
Well, I think if we go back to those posts in the car park, I think it started quite early on, and people were interested in the sun and the sun setting and those sorts of things, and particularly the long days and so on. And so they're interested in what's going on around them. So they start doing that, and then so Stonehenge is a development of that. It's something that happens a lot later when they've got a lot more knowledge about it, but they do build it really, really carefully.
I have a fact about Stonehenge.
Oh, go on then.
Oh, yeah.
Did you know that some parts of Stonehenge are actually in Wales right now?
That is absolutely true. That's amazing knowledge. Well done. Yeah.
My mum told me it.
Oh, well done, Mum. It's true. There are stones from Wales that have been brought all the way from Wales, which is a proper commute, isn't it? Can you imagine bringing a 20-stone like by boat, by rolling on logs? I mean, someone being like, come on, it's just not 150 miles to go. But we also think now there's new research saying one of the stones comes from Scotland. So this is a monument they are assembling from stones that are as far away as possible, really. And it's incredibly extraordinary that they've done this. Why have they done it? We don't know. Lots of different theories. Some people have said sort of clocks, timekeeping, astronomy, sun and moon, maybe for funerals, maybe for burial. People have investigated sound, whether the acoustics are really good for a kind of concert. Stonehenge is amazing, but there are other sites that we also need to care about. Okay, next question.
How long does it take to become an archaeologist?
Professor Nicky.
Well, I think it doesn't have to take a long time. If you want to be an archaeologist, there are lots of ways into doing that. So you can join the Young Archaeologist Club. You can just watch television programs and read magazines and things about archaeology. And if you really want to do it, a bit more than that, you can go and do it at university, like I did, like Greg did. He did archaeology and history.
I did.
He did. So there are lots of ways to do that. So if you want, do you think you might want to be an archaeologist? Maybe. Are there other people in the audience who think they might want to be an archaeologist? It's a great, some grown-ups as well, yay! Yeah, well, come and do archaeology. It's a great subject to do. Next question. There's some various lots.
Why do we call it Star Carr?
Yeah.
That is a good question, because it sounds quite glamorous, doesn't it? Star Carr. And so there's a professor at Durham called Peter Ellie Conway who came up with a theory on this. He thinks that it comes from Viking words, Danish words, and it basically means sedge bog. So sedge is a reeds and carr is bog. So it doesn't sound quite so glamorous when you translate it like that, does it?
No.
Suddenly I'm looking at these just going, it's just bogcats. Bogcats. Star Carr, because it does sound quite glamorous, Star Carr, doesn't it? Amazing. And next question, I think we're going that way. Yeah.
Do you know some Skara Brae was actually a passage to lots of different other houses?
Yeah, that's a fantastic knowledge. I mean, what an incredibly informed audience. Skara Brae is amazing, and there's this sort of Nessa Broggar and the Ring of Broggar. There's these amazing archaeological sites all around Orkney that have been dug recently, and there's great websites if you want to look them up. Skara Brae is just part of this bigger kind of world. And it seems like people moved around a lot as well, we think. Probably people maybe went from Orkney to Scotland, maybe down into England, maybe across the Wales. So it's not that people just lived in their little village forever. They maybe travelled a lot, which maybe is the same with the Mesolithic as well, with Star Carr. So people in the Stone Age were commuters. They got on their bike, well, not their bike, they got on their deer. I can't say that's not scientifically accurate. They maybe a horse, I don't know. Yeah, it's amazing, absolutely. Skara Brae is a community of 100 people maybe, but they are connected up to other places as well. Should we go that way in the room? I don't want to make you run too far, but I think this side of the room's had a go. We need to go maybe that way, yeah.
What animals did they eat?
It is for you.
It is for me. That's a very good question. They had some animals there at the time which were wild animals. They had red deer and roe deer, so venison. They had wild boar, so a bit like pork. They had what they didn't have was sheep or goats, so they weren't eating lamb. But they had lots of other animals as well, and the question is, were they eating them? So they had things like beaver and badger. Were they actually eating that meat? And one thing that is quite intriguing is that on quite a few Mesolithic sites, you get hedgehog. And so the question is, are they eating hedgehog? But they had a lot of wild animals to choose from, and fish and birds as well. So quite an interesting diet, and plants.
Were they eating bread? I mean, because we have evidence now for bread from about 14,000 years.
Sorry, we have evidence of bread about 14,000 years ago in the Middle East. We have evidence of people messing around with wild crops and smushing them into a sort of porridge 23,000 years ago? Is there any evidence of that sort of behaviour?
No, sadly there isn't, and really bread and cereals didn't come till the Neolithic in Britain, but they did probably eat lots of different plant food. There are lots of plant foods around, and on some sites we find particularly fruit, evidence for fruit being eaten, so wild strawberries and apples and things like that, but no bread at the time. Do you think we should just do one more question? Yeah, one more, and then we finish up. Right, last. Lucky person.
Why is Stonehenge not actually a henge?
Oh, it's a very complicated, boring answer. So it's in the book. Yeah, technically a henge. I'm going to get this wrong now, and it's being filmed as well. A henge, I think. Hang on, I might have to look it up. Basically, a henge is where you've got a ditch and a bank, and then inside you have your stone bits. The henge is the ditch and the bank. Stonehenge is the wrong way around. So, although it's the world's most famous henge, it's the one that everyone, if you say to someone henge, they go stone. It's not a henge. So it's an invert henge. The bank and the ditch are the wrong way around, but we call it Stonehenge because you can't just call it stone ditch. That's rubbish. So it's not a henge, but it's the world's best henge, and we'll keep it that way forever, I think. But yeah, in its medieval days, it's called Stanahenge because they thought it was a place of hangings. They thought it was an execution site. So the Anglo-Saxons sort of noticed it and thought, oh, this must be where people were killed. So all through history, people had different theories of what Stonehenge was for. The Romans were interested in it, the Saxons were interested, the Tudors did the first archaeology there, and so gradually over time, people have kind of gone, oh, yeah, we know more now. But yeah, it's not a henge.
So I think we're going to end there. Greg has kindly said that he will sign some more books outside if you're still up for that. I just want to, before you all head off, I just want to say a huge thank you to Greg for suggesting this event and coming and entertaining us and having an interesting conversation about the Stone Age. Thank you very much indeed.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you. Thank you also, Professor Nicky, for sharing expertise and being so enlightening me on why I messed up with the Mesolithic. I feel like I've got it wrong, but buy the book. But no, thank you so much. Thank you so much for coming. If you want to get a book signed, if you want to ask an archaeology question, you might be hanging around. I'll do my best to answer. But thank you so much. I'd love to see you. Cheers.